Two wolves are circling each other on a frozen ridge, and every hair on both of their bodies is standing straight up like they've been plugged into an outlet. One of them is bigger, noticeably bigger, the kind of bigger that should end this in about 4 seconds. The smaller wolf's ears are pinned flat, its lips are peeled back off its teeth, and it is snarling in a way that sounds like a chainsaw deciding whether or not to start. For a second, it looks like this is going to be the kind of fight that ends with someone limping into the tree line, missing an ear. Then, mid-snarl, the smaller wolf just stops, drops its head, flattens its whole body low to the snow, turns its neck sideways, and offers up the one part of itself that a wolf bite would end instantly, the throat, right there, inches from the bigger wolf's open jaw. You'd expect this to be the part where things get gruesome. Instead, the bigger wolf's whole posture deflates, like someone let the air out of it. It sniffs the exposed throat once, huffs, and just walks off, stiff-legged, irritated, like a guy who showed up to a bar fight and the other guy immediately started apologizing for something completely unrelated. No blood, no kill, just a very unclimactic ending to what should have been a massacre. Yep, that's me, standing about 30 feet away in the snow, mouth open, absolutely floored, because I fully expected to watch an animal die, and instead I watched an animal talk its way out of it, using nothing but body language. Oh, hey there. I should probably explain why I was even out on that ridge, and why I'm currently narrating this to you from a perspective that does not, strictly speaking, involve having a pulse. I used to be a field volunteer tracking a wolf reintroduction project. Cold mornings, worse coffee, a job that mostly involved staring through binoculars at animals that had zero interest in being stared at. I wasn't killed by a wolf before you get your hopes up. What actually happened is far more embarrassing. I saw a wolf appear about 20 feet from my blind, panicked, remembered some half-baked survival tip about playing dead in front of predators, and had a heart attack lying face down in the snow, pretending to be a corpse in front of an animal that was just passing through and had already lost interest in me. I misread a threat that wasn't a threat, deployed the wrong species submission tactic, and my own nervous system finished the job the wolf never intended to start. So now I'm dead. And apparently, being dead comes with unlimited free time and a front row seat to nature, because I've spent what feels like several eternities parked on ridgelines, in dens, behind rocks, watching animals do the one thing that fascinates me more than anything else they do: give up. On purpose, strategically, and live. That's what we're doing today. We're talking about submission signals, the body language of I yield, and why across an enormous chunk of the animal kingdom, showing weakness on purpose is one of the smartest, least understood survival tools that exists. This is going to wreck a few things you think you know. Buckle in. Here's the first thing almost everyone gets wrong. A submission signal is not an animal admitting defeat the way a boxer taps out. It's not shame. It's not surrender in the human sense, where somebody's pride gets crushed and they slink home to sulk about it. A submission signal is a message, a very specific, very old, and very effective message that says, I am not a threat to you. Please stop treating me like one. That's it. That's the whole transaction. Ethologists, people who study animal behavior for a living, which honestly sounds like a better job than mine was, call this appeasement behavior. It's a communication system that evolved specifically to end conflicts without anyone getting hurt. Which brings up an obvious question. Why would evolution bother building an off switch for violence when violence seems like exactly the kind of thing that helps you win? Which brings us to something even stranger. Winning a fight and surviving a fight are not the same goal. Evolution doesn't care who's toughest. It cares who's still alive to pass on genes next spring. And it turns out those two things conflict a lot more than people assume. Let's clear something up, because this is going to keep coming up and I'd rather rip the bandage off now. You've probably heard of the alpha wolf, the dominant, iron-jawed wolf pack leader who fought his way to the top and rules through intimidation. It's in movies, it's in bad dating advice, it's in the vocabulary of guys who've never seen a wolf outside of a screensaver. Here's the thing, the scientist who popularized that idea spent the rest of his career trying to take it back. Back in 1970, biologist Lee David Mech published a hugely influential book describing wolf packs in terms of alpha, beta, and omega rank, a strict hierarchy built on domination.
The problem was where that research came from: captive wolves, strangers to each other, crammed together in enclosures. Put unrelated adults in a cage with limited resources, and yes, you'll get tension, posturing, and fighting. But that's not a wolf pack. That's a stressful group home. When Mech later spent years studying actual wild wolf packs on Ellesmere Island in the Canadian Arctic, he found something almost boringly wholesome by comparison. Wild packs are just families, a breeding pair and their offspring. The alpha wasn't a wolf that clawed its way to power, it was just mom and dad.
Mech spent decades afterward publicly asking people to drop the term and eventually got his own original book pulled from print, Myth. Every wolf pack has one dominant wolf who fights everyone else for the top spot. False. Verdict busted. Wild packs are usually families, not gladiator pits. The leaders got there the same way most parents get put in charge, by having kids. Why does this matter for our topic today? Because if you build your whole mental model of wolves around constant violent competition, submission signals stop making sense. Why would a dominance-obsessed killing machine back off from an exposed throat? But if you build your model around a family unit that desperately needs its members intact and functional, submission signals make perfect sense. You don't want to injure your own sibling over a squabble about who gets the better sleeping spot. That's not leadership, that's just a bad Thanksgiving. Fast fact. Wolves that stay with their birth pack instead of striking out alone do so because dispersing alone is genuinely dangerous. Lone wolves risk being killed by neighboring packs defending territory. Staying, even in a subordinate role, can be the safer bet, which brings us neatly into something that should reframe this entire topic for you. Imagine you're a professional athlete, not a boxer, something with a long season, 100 games a year, and every single injury threatens your whole career. Would you throw full-force punches at your own teammates during practice? Obviously not. You'd get benched, hurt, or both, and the team would lose either way. That's roughly the math predators are running constantly. A wolf, a coyote, a hyena doesn't get an injury timeout. There's no trainer taping up a torn muscle. An injury that would sideline a human athlete for 6 weeks can be a death sentence for a wild animal because it can't hunt, can't defend territory, and can't keep up with the group. This is less warrior culture and more small, cautious accountant managing a very fragile energy budget. Every calorie matters, every joint matters. A victory that leaves you with a torn tendon is not actually a victory. It's a slow-motion loss you won't notice for another 2 weeks. So here's the trade evolution keeps making over and over across wildly different species. Build in a way to stop a fight before it gets expensive. Give the loser an obvious I quit signal, and more importantly, this is the part people skip, give the winner an instinct to actually accept it. Because a submission signal is worthless if the other guy ignores it. This only works if both sides are running the same software. You're a young wolf, low in the pack's pecking order, and you just grabbed a scrap of meat before the breeding pair got their share. That's a mistake, a big one. The breeding male turns, stiff-legged, ears up, and stares straight at you. Your options in this moment are limited. You could fight, you could run, or you could do what wolves actually do most of the time: drop your body low, tuck your tail between your legs, flatten your ears, and lick at the corner of his mouth while making yourself as small and unthreatening as physically possible. If you do it fast enough and mean it, the conflict is usually over in about 4 seconds. No blood, no exile, just an awkward silence and a lesson learned. That posture you just performed has a name, and it's older than language. Let's actually break down what a submission display looks like, because it's more specific than just the animal looks sad. Lowered body, tucked tail, flattened ears, averted gaze, direct eye contact reads as a challenge in a lot of species, so looking away is part of the message, not shyness. And that muzzle-licking behavior I just mentioned isn't random affection, it's ancient. Here's a detail wildlife documentaries almost never explain, and it's one of my favorite pieces of evolutionary trivia in the entire animal kingdom. Wolf pups beg for food by licking at the corners of an adult's mouth. It triggers the adult to regurgitate a meal. It's a hardwired feeding behavior. Baby asks, parent provides. That exact gesture, unchanged, gets recycled by adult wolves as an appeasement signal. A grown wolf licking at another wolf during a tense moment is essentially saying in body language, "I am small, I am harmless, please treat me like the baby you'd never hurt." This is a real evolutionary phenomenon called neoteny, retaining juvenile traits or behaviors into adulthood because they're socially useful. Evolution looked at acting like a helpless baby and thought, it actually works pretty well for de-escalating violence too. Let's keep that around forever. It's less master strategist and more evolution finding a hack and never patching it. And it doesn't stop with wolves. This is going to come up again, so file it away.
Now for the moment that got us all here, the throat exposure. Let's talk about what's actually happening when an animal offers up its most vulnerable point mid-fight. Myth. Exposing the throat is a fatal mistake. It's basically inviting the other animal to finish you off.
False. Verdict busted, and this one matters. This behavior only works because of something called ritualized aggression, a concept the ethologist Konrad Lorenz spent a career documenting. In a huge number of species with the physical ability to seriously injure their own kind, evolution has also installed an instinctive break, an inhibition against following through on a killing blow once a clear submission signal has been given. Think about why this had to happen. A wolf's jaws can kill an elk. If wolves regularly killed each other in ordinary pack squabbles over food and mates, packs would shred themselves apart from the inside, and packs that hold together hunt better, defend territory better, and raise more pups. So the species that survived long-term are, largely, the ones where the off switch evolved right alongside the weapon. You don't get a bite that powerful without also getting some kind of safety feature. The throat isn't a target being handed over, it's a signal being sent to a receiver that's biologically wired to receive it. What is actually going through its head? This is where I have to be careful, because I'm dead, not psychic. Nobody can climb inside a wolf's skull and confirm exactly what it's thinking, so let's separate what we actually know from what's a reasonable, evidence-backed guess. Known, submission postures correlate strongly with stress hormone spikes. The animal's body is in a genuine high-alert state, not a calm, calculated one. Likely, the decision to submit isn't some cold cost-benefit spreadsheet running in real time. It's closer to a fast, instinctive reflex, similar to how you'd flinch before you consciously decide to flinch. Hypothesized, and this is the fuzzier part, some researchers think there's a social memory component too, that animals in stable groups learn who backs down from whom, and that this shapes future encounters without needing to physically test it out every single time. So, no, the wolf isn't thinking, I shall now deploy diplomatic strategy number 4. It's closer to a full-body reflex shaped by millions of years of the animals who reacted this way survived and the ones who didn't. Confidence, fear, and calculation are all tangled together in there. And honestly, that tracks. Most of you reading this can't fully explain your own gut reactions either. And that's half the story, because I promised you this wasn't going to be a fairy tale where every submission signal magically works every time. Reality has exceptions, and skipping them would be dishonest. The system breaks down under a few predictable conditions. Resource scarcity is one. When food is desperately scarce, the cost-benefit math shifts, and animals sometimes push conflicts further than they normally would because the calorie stakes outweigh the usual restraint. Infanticide is a darker one. In several species, including lions and some primates, a new dominant male taking over a group will kill unrelated infants, and no submission signal from the mother reliably prevents it, because the male's evolutionary incentive here isn't about resolving a dominance dispute, it's about ending nursing early so the female becomes fertile again sooner. It's a genuinely brutal wrinkle, and it's a good reminder that evolution isn't running on kindness, it's running on whatever gets genes into the next generation, full stop.
And captivity is the other big exception, which loops us right back to part 2. Put animals under chronic stress in unnatural groupings with no ability to disperse or escape, and the whole delicate system of ritualized aggression and reliable appeasement can degrade. That's part of why those old captive wolf studies painted such a misleadingly brutal picture in the first place. Stress doesn't just make individuals more volatile, it can make an entire social system's rulebook stop functioning the way it evolved to. Let's ground this in something concrete instead of just vibes. The shift in wolf science took decades. Mech published the alpha hierarchy framing in 1970. It took until 1999 for him to formally publish a correction, and it took over 20 more years after that for his original book to actually go out of print in 2022. That's over 50 years for one flawed idea based on a study of stressed captive animals to work its way out of popular culture. For comparison, that's roughly the same amount of time between the moon landing and right now. One misread group of stressed-out captive wolves shaped generations of dog training advice and a small mountain of self-help nonsense about alpha personalities. Bad science about animal hierarchy didn't just misinform wildlife documentaries, it got repurposed into human leadership seminars. Nature really does not care what we do with its homework.
Here's something nobody tells you about being a ghost who watches wolves for a living. You start noticing how much of this maps onto humans, and it's uncomfortable. We're one of the only social species that's built entire cultures around punishing submission instead of accepting it. A wolf backs down, the conflict ends. Everyone moves on with their evening. A human backs down, and depending on the room, that can get treated as an invitation to keep pushing. We didn't inherit the acceptance half of the system nearly as reliably as we inherited the posturing half, which is a strange thing to learn from watching wolves in the snow. But here we are. I've got nothing but time. Look, I'm not about to turn into a public service announcement on you, but since I clearly had some gaps in my own wildlife knowledge, gaps that, again, technically killed me, let's turn this into something useful. 1. A submission signal is communication, not confession. Don't project human guilt onto an animal's fear response. 2. If you're around a defensive dog or wild animal, remember that direct, prolonged eye contact often reads as a challenge, not friendliness. Looking away can lower tension. 3. Alpha is largely dead as a scientific term for wild wolves. If a dog trainer is still selling you dominance theory, that's a red flag worth Googling before you follow their advice. 4. Playing dead is a real, useful tactic against certain specific predators in certain specific situations. It is not a universal panic button, and it definitely doesn't work on an animal that was never planning to attack you in the first place. Learn the actual protocol for the actual species in your actual area. Don't improvise this one, the way I did. 5. Appeasement behavior in your own pets, the tail tuck, the flattened ears, the frantic licking, is a stress signal, not bad manners. It's worth listening to instead of correcting. 6. Ritualized restraint exists because uncontrolled violence is expensive for everyone involved, predator and prey alike. Nature figured out de-escalation technology a very, very long time before we did. And maybe the one that actually applies to you, alive and reading this right now, showing weakness on purpose isn't automatically a defeat. Sometimes it's the single smartest move available, and every wolf on that ridge already knew it before I did. I've been out here a long time now. I've watched that same throat exposure play out more times than I could count, and it gets me every time. Because somewhere between the snarling and the sniffing and the awkward silence afterward, there's a whole invisible language running underneath it that most people walking through these woods will never notice. I noticed it 4 minutes too late for it to matter for me personally, but it's not too late for you. Go outside. Watch something. Don't play dead unless you actually know why you're doing it. If you want more videos like this, subscribe.